Hey, y'all, what's happening? This is the Seth Joyner Show. Glad to have you guys with me. We took the week off last week for Blackout Tuesday 2020, but we're back this week. Going to talk some football. But many of you guys know, the 900-pound gorilla in the room right now is everything that's going on. It's almost like a Marvin Gaye. What's going on? Where do we start? With everything that's going on, from COVID to the murder of George Floyd. It seems like we're coming out of COVID, and then the George Floyd situation takes hold of our country. And now we've got, civil unrest, protests, rioting, and looting. Man, I wonder big time for this country where we're headed, and what's really going on. People have their opinions about what's going on as far as Black Lives Matter. People have their opinions as far as, their beliefs and thoughts on racism. I believe that we all know that racism is a systemic issue in our country, and there's just no getting around it. But as I look at what's transpiring, what's going on, I denounce, and I'm really opposed to all the looting that I see going on, because that doesn't really solve anything. It just makes the situation that much worse, in my opinion, based upon thoughts about a people and who they are and what they are. So I don't condone that, but I do condone the protesting. And in my opinion, this thing is not going to be like the Colin Kaepernick, where he was discredited, forgot about, swept under the rug. Just the other day, I was scrolling through social media, and I saw my daughter in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, protesting. And I really didn't know that, the protest was worldwide. So this thing is bigger than what's transpiring here in the United States. This is a movement across the world. I believe that racism is something that's taught. When you put two young children together, they just play. They don't recognize color. They don't recognize skin color. They just play, So racism is a thing, in my opinion, that's taught as kids grow older. And to me, the next generation is going to be the one that brings about the change through different thoughts, and really a change of heart. It really, when you hear some of the comments that's coming out of some people as far as this is concerned, some of it's nasty. Some of it's nasty on both sides. The problem is, it's a heart issue as far as racism is concerned, because, you can talk about religion, you can talk about sex, you can talk about politics, and you've got choices there. But when you talk about racism is the one thing that there is no choice. You either sit on the right side of what's right, or you're on the wrong side of what's wrong. Human beings are human beings. I don't care what the color of their skin is. We know the difference. We've experienced, the racism. I've experienced it to a certain extent. Listen, I am 2 generations removed from slavery. So I know the history. I understand. I've seen the bitterness, the anger, and all those things that go along with it. But when do we change? When are we going to start listening to what people have to say? Colin Kaepernick tried to, speak, in my opinion, based upon taking a knee, and everyone listened to it and they heard it in a different way. What they heard is that I disrespect this nation, I disrespect this flag, I disrespect, the power structure of the United States. I don't think it was ever disrespect. It was an opportunity for him to protest and demonstrate that he was unhappy with how things were transpiring in our community, and we shut him down. How prophetic. Now, a young man loses his life with a knee, not on the ground, but a knee on his neck. What is really going on with our society? Where are we headed? How do we fix this? We fix it by listening. Can you hear? Can you hear the cries? Can you hear the anger? Can you hear the frustration of people who endure racism in this nation? If you can hear it, and you can hear it with open ears and open heart, then that means that you're open to the change that's necessary. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the processes. I don't have all the things that's necessary to try to figure out how to get this done. But this nation is too great of a country for us not to figure it out. For us not to figure it out. At the end of the day, it comes down to, how much do you care about your fellow brother, your fellow human being? Do you care about him enough to look at him equally? Then things can change. If you can care enough about wanting him and his family to be as successful as yours, then we can change. But as long as we have this me first attitude, this selfish attitude, this elitist attitude where you believe that, someone believes that they're better than someone else for whatever reason it is, this nation is going to be fighting an uphill battle. There was a time where racism was a thing that was hidden. You could feel it, you could sense it, you knew it was there, but people weren't outward with it. They didn't just, they weren't outwardly forward with it. It was something that was hidden. And you could see it from time to time flash and rear its ugly head. But we living in a time now where people believe that it's socially acceptable to show their racism. Now, a lot of people would say, hey, I'm okay with that. At least I know what I'm dealing with. But when people start to take liberties as far as their racism is concerned, then you have a fundamental breakdown in society and how society is looked at. Because now it's just okay for me to express my hate for you outwardly, and there's no ramifications for it. We as a nation need to change. We as a human race need to understand that we're all one human race. Listen, Black lives matter. All lives matter. However you want to look at it. These lives are lives that God gave us, and we're here to share this earth together. And there's got to be a way that we can come to a position after all of these years to find equality and justice and do away with police brutality. Like I said, I can go on and on and on. This country is at a crossroads, and each and every one needs to look at themselves and ask themselves, what is it that I can do to help make this situation better? With that being said, I got some great guests on tap for you guys today. My good friend, Harold Carmichael. Harold Carmichael is the #1 receiver on the all-time list for the Philadelphia Eagles. Elected and inducted, will be inducted into the 2020 Hall of Fame. Played with the Eagles from 71 to 83. And I'm happy to have this man on my show today to not only talk about what's happening in the world, but also to talk about what's going on with our Philadelphia Eagles. Next guy in, #3 on the all-time list. Really good friend of mine, golfer friend of mine, Eagles Hall of Famer, first-round pick out of North Carolina State. Everybody knows Mike Quick Six. Six, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Seth. It's a pleasure to be with you again, man. I really don't even want to interrupt what you started because, that monologue, if that's what it was outstanding. And I like to sit back and hear sometimes just people who have their finger on the pulse of what's going on, smart people who can get it out the right way, say it the way it needs to be said, and be very direct and to the point. And I hope that your theme music coming into this show is Marvin Gaye, because what's really going on?
True.
What is going on?
True. There is no doubt about it. So I'm gonna bring in our last guest, and I'm really thrilled to have the three of you guys on. This guy, he was only in Philadelphia for a short time, but my goodness, what an impact he had. Inducted into the Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2018. Ranked third overall in the history of the league. Still can't understand why this man wasn't the first ballot. Terrell Owens, man, welcome to the show. Good to see you, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. I appreciate you guys having me on board, and excuse my room. I am down here in Houston where I just attended the funeral service of the late George Floyd. So that's where I am right now. So definitely just hearing you talk, as Mike Quick said, just jumping on, toward the end of what you had to say, man. Just being here in Houston and being around the family. Steven Jackson, who was obviously a good friend of George, they call him Twin.
Yep.
I know Steven Jackson personally, and just being around some of the family before and after the funeral, man, it was moving. And just to hear his niece emotionally really express what George meant to her as an uncle, and just the dignitaries that were in the building, man, you can just tell the emotions in that room. I mean, there was sorrow, there was sadness, there was a little feistiness in there, but man, you can just tell change is around the corner. And as you said, man, we've been dealing with this for 400 plus years, and we as a Black community, I think we're up to our necks, no pun intended, to the situation. But yeah, man, it was an emotionally charged room, and you could just tell changes around the corner.
Well, Harold, before I come back to you, Tio, I just want you to give our listeners a sense. I know you said you were around the family, the church, but I'm pretty sure there were people outside of the church. I mean, what is if you had to take the temperature of what the environment is like, right now, tell us about that.
I mean, from my standpoint of just driving up to the service, I mean, the police were out in full force. I mean, it was an overwhelming outpour of people that were in support of what's going on. Obviously, him being laid to rest. But as the preacher said, this is not a time of mourning. This was a situation of celebration. It was a homegoing, so to speak. And so everybody, man, I think they're moved. And when you think about what is going on in history, as you said, Seth, you're 2 decades removed. You think about the history and where we are now. But I think these kids that are speaking out, just of all races, all ethnicities, all backgrounds, it just shows you that these youth are our future. And so just to walk around and just, again, to gauge the temperature, everybody, they gave the family respect. They knew what this day was about, but the message was, yeah, we're laying him to rest, but we're not laying down to rest what we're fighting for. And I think that's the message that kind of stuck home with me, and I think is sticking home with everybody that was in attendance and everybody that watched.
Harold, go ahead, man.
Well, first of all, T.O., I like to just say, man, I envy you being down there, being amongst those people. I would have loved to have been down there, but because of this virus going around, right, unable to do it. But this has been so emotional for me. I think I've been crying almost every day when I see different things going on in the United States and around the world. Pretty much, this is something that I've been pretty much dealing with for years back in the '60s as a kid. Just seeing what happened. I've had so many things. I'm down from Jacksonville, Florida, and it was pretty rough down there when just being Black down there. It was very tough because people would do things. I know, coming from football games, people would come and egg you, hit you with eggs and all of that. Come up to you and say all kinds of different things. So, what we're going through now is, I've been going through it for a long time, and just what I've seen this past 2 weeks, it's been really heart wrenching. It's been really something that been again. I've been almost crying. When I saw George Floyd's daughter, she didn't say anything. Just the look in her face, and you can see that she's hurt. She really don't really get it all yet. But when she said that, that her dad is going to change the world, has changed the world. And that is something that really got to me, hit home. I look at my son when he was young. I look at my granddaughters what are they had to go through, or what are they going to be going through? This is something that we're going to have to just not let go. We're going to have to take this, hold that rein, and ride this through until justice is served.
Harold, to your point, like I said, this movement is different. It feels different because it's global. I mean, it's global from the standpoint that, you look all across the world and people are standing in solidarity for what we're trying to change here in the United States. That's a good thing. The thing that's had me dumbfounded, the rioting and the looting, and then the conversation that goes on as a result of those things, and how bad it makes the entire cause look when you have these false actors and these antifas, that are flown in to do what they're doing. It makes the hill even that much higher to climb, Mike.
Yeah, Seth, there are going to be people always that'll politicize situations like this and try and make it something that it's not. But I can tell you this. First of all, Tio, I'm so glad that you were there representing, and just your support, just your being there, I'm sure means a lot to that family and so many people that are in this struggle. But when you look at this situation, what I'm encouraged about is the number of people that are getting behind this. Like you said, all nationalities, everybody. But I'm getting so many calls from people, friends of mine, friends who are not Black, not African American, but other friends wanting to know what can they do, wanting to know what types of things I'm involved in, what types of things that I'm doing, because they want to support this. And I think that is the difference. Harold, like myself, T.O. maybe wasn't there yet, but in the 60s, when we saw very similar things going on in the 60s, but we didn't have the groundswell that we have now. We didn't have the support that you're seeing now throughout the country, throughout the world, to try and push this thing forward, push an agenda forward for change. And, without that change, without reform, and especially in our justice system, more things so this is a repeat, and it's going to repeat again if we're not able to do something with our justice system and institute some type of reform.
Right. Well, T.O. and Harold, Roger Goodell put out a video this week speaking for all 32 owners. A little late, because from what I understood, the players did their own, and then the NFL had to come back over top of them because their statement wasn't up to par. But just the admission that hey, we got it wrong. I mean, that is huge. That is huge for a organization like the NFL. After all that we went through with taking a knee and protesting, that they would come out and say, hey, you know what? We got this thing wrong and we got to do better.
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree, and I'm still not satisfied with it because, again, it took them to listen to. It's like the aftermath. It's almost like they're too little, too late every time, and so now these players are starting to understand the leverage and the power that they have. Not only just the white players, but I think the Black players. I think this is where the disconnect has been for so many years, and for so many reasons, because of so many things that are linked together. When you think about some of these politicians and people that are going into office, some of these these billionaire owners, they're the ones that are funding these guys that are not listening and protecting us as human beings, citizens, and as we are here today, protecting Black lives. And so now for me, it's an empty apology. It's always too little, too late. And so for me, it's unfortunate that I had to know George Floyd, and I think for a number of people across the country through this death. And I think now I'm fortunate, just to right now to have breath to be a part of change. And I think that's going to come. The justice that we're seeking, the equality that has been denied. And I'm just here, and we're a few guys. We're going to be holding a protest on Thursday in Los Angeles for Kaepernick. And I think not only just for and George Floyd, but I think I'm asking, and we're in talks of who's all going to be involved. There are some celebrities involved, but we want to stand up with Cap, and so we're asking everybody that's in the Los Angeles area, if you're nearby. It's going to be Thursday at noon. I think near the Grand Western Forum on Manchester and Prairie. But we're going to be standing up for Cap, for what he did that fell on deaf ears. And so we're asking for everybody to come out. We understand the NFL gave, pretty much a statement. Roger Goodell then came out and gave a statement after the players had given a statement. But, for me, quite frankly, I don't accept it. And I think a lot of guys and a lot of people across this country, as I said, this world is linked and connected in so many different ways. Again, these football players, we all have played in the National Football League. There are things that we feel like we rightfully deserve, but we still haven't gotten. When you think about health insurance, when you think about guaranteed contracts, a lot of people are oblivious to how much money the NFL generates. They generate more money than the NBA and the MLB, Major League Baseball combined. And so, not to get off on a tangent or sidetrack, but that's part of what we have done. Just like this country was built on the backs of Black people, the NFL wouldn't be what it is today without a lot of us Black athletes. And I think we need to be rewarded for the work that the guys have put in before us and the guys that are putting in the work now.
So before I want Mike and Harold to chime in, but Theo, I challenge you when you say you don't accept his apology, because at the end of the day, man, what we have to do is we have to have some dialogue, and it has to be some understanding, some hearing, some changing of the heart. So, listen, I think we all know the hardest thing for Roger Goodell to do at the behest of the 32 owners in the NFL was to put that video out that he had to put out after all that, that they said and all that they believed. And, it's just one of those things where, okay, they know what they have to do. Now, we can either continue to fight along those lines of not getting them to admit, and move in a positive direction, or we can say, hey, you know what, inside, maybe it is a little too late, but at least we got it. And now we've got positive ground to stand on and positive ground to move on. That would be my only comeback as far as not accepting the apology.
Well, a lot of times the apologies are there. Is it a true apology?
Right.
If after the apology comes action. What are you going to do now?
There you go.
That is what concerns me a lot about a lot of these walkbacks and retractions of things that they're said. I understand that they have to do this and take some of that heat off. Somebody had to say something. Some of the leaders from the NFL had to say something. But now we'd like to see some actions from those conversations, from that apologies.
And Seth, I totally agree with you. Yeah, obviously there has to be some common ground and obviously some forgiveness there. But I think with that apology that he had given, I think maybe I would be more accepting if he apologized to the very person that started this 4 years ago, and that was Colin Kaepernick.
I got you.
I think I would be more, like I said, more apt in receiving, more receptive of that. And I think that's what I think a lot of people feels that way as well. If he would apologize to Kaepernick and give this man a job, because this guy's he was stripped of his livelihood because of a peaceful protest. And you can't tell me now, even he's 4 years removed or whatever years removed from football, that he can't play this game at a high level, considering what we have seen in the National Football League since he left the league.
And you've got
there's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Go ahead, Quick.
No, that's well said, Tio. And you've got to have more lives go down and lives that are videoed for this thing to really start to get the proper attention that it should get. But with Roger's statement, it has to at least start there, And then you're right, Harold. You're so on point. You've got to hold them to what they're saying. because, you know, we're all Southern boys, and there's a saying in the South that you lead with your feet, and it's not what you say, but it's what you do. So they've said a lot of things. Now we've got to make sure that there are people in place to hold these guys accountable to what they're saying that they're going to do, so that you know, even this new Rooney Rule. Yeah, yeah, everybody's shaking their head. Even the new Rooney Rule. So you put these things in place, but it's just many times the NFL will put out propaganda to just cover the NFL, just
smoke and mirrors,
make sure that the shield is protected. And we have to get beyond that. We have to hold people accountable.
Well, you know, talk about holding people accountable. After Roger Goodell, you made his statement. Obviously, you know, the president of the United States came out and rebuked him for possibly giving players the okay to take a knee once the season starts. You know, I just wonder sometimes, you know, what goes on and what's really happening again, Michael, because you know that every player in the NFL, what's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to take a knee the first game, you know. So now you're going to have all of this, you know, all of this craziness going on again, because it's not going to be just, you know, the protest. It's going to be the media showing the protest. It's going to be the president tweeting about the protest,
right?
You know, and his base, you know, talking about, you know, the disrespect rather than, you know, the protest itself. It's like we're on this crazy merry-go-round, guys, and you know, we just can't get off. You know, it seems like when it's about to slow down, it speeds up all over again.
Well, I'm just hoping that this whole merry-go-round, it's strong enough that it just runs over those types of attitude, those types of people, because, you know, that's how this thing got sidetracked when Colin first took a knee. When he first decided that he wanted to do this, it quickly was politicized. And rather than listen to the message, as everyone's been telling them now, you're not listening. Malcolm said it. Colin said it. They all said it, that you're not listening to the message. And rather than listening to the message, now we're to this point. But you have to start somewhere.
That's the problem. People are not listening. You know, I hear it, but, you know, until it gets close to home, until it really gets close to you, that it affects what you're doing, you don't hear it. You know, what do you do with your kids? You know, right now, people have to talk to their kids, the young kids, tell them this, what you saw on TV with a police officer on somebody's kneeling on somebody's neck, is not right. The protest that you see, this is what you need to be involved in, that you need to hear about. And I want to tell you that these types of things have to stop. You know, people are not, you know, this won't stop until people tell their kids. You know, you have to soften the heart. You know, what's in the heart is going to come out of the mouth. So if you can soften that heart, we'll be okay. You know, people just don't get it. They don't understand the protest. They really don't get it. People are talking about, you got to talk to me about it. You got to school me about it. If you're 50 years and older and you still don't know, it's a bunch of bull. You know, you got to know what this protest is about. You got to know what the kneeling with Kaepernick was about.
Gentlemen, sometimes I believe that people know, they just don't want to face the reality of what that is.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's hard for people sometimes to see beyond, because if that's not your experience, if that's not what you've experienced, it's hard for you to even fathom that, because in your mind you don't see or believe that those things, you know, actually happen, but they do. You know, and no one's crying wolf here. You can't cry wolf for 400 years. You know, there's something here to those people who say and believe, oh, there's no racism in the United States. There's racism in the United States. There's racism all over this world.
Right. And I think with all the events that have occurred, and you look at the global protest that is happening, I think it has caused a lot of white people and other people not of color, I think, to educate themselves, to read about the history. because at the end of the day, as Harold said, and what he was alluding to, like everybody's wondering why we're doing the protest, and everybody has made their attempts of peaceful protesting, and it fell on deaf ears. And so I've had a lot of my white friends that I've talked to, and they've questioned me, and even Liz Abib, who works for Fox in Los Angeles, and she asked me, she goes, "What can I do? Help me understand." And they're trying to understand, in the beginning, why the looting, why the protesting, why the rioting. And like Martin Luther King said, he said, a riot is the language of the unheard. And at the end of the day, we as Black Americans, Black males, like simply, we are tired of getting killed. And I have kids. I have 2 daughters that are on the cusp of driving. I have a son that's 20 already, and I have a brother, a son, and a nephew, and I think about them. If they get stopped by the police, they're one traffic stop away, one misunderstanding, or one poorly trained, or one rogue cop from being added to the long list of people, just like Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. And so that's where I think, I'm using my platform, a visible platform, to be heard, to be a part of something, to be a part of the solution. And so I'm not going to stop. I mean, like I said, I've never gotten so emotional for someone to cry tears the way that I did the moment that I saw George, with the police cop with his knee on his neck. Like I instantly got emotional and shared tears for a man that I didn't even know, because of I think it just went back to me being raised by my grandmother. When you talk about growing up, my grandmother grew up during the time period of segregation. She explained to me how she had to drink from a different water fountain where it specified white and blacks. I listened to her talk about how she grew up, how her mom and dad grew up, and how they picked cotton, how they were treated. So for whatever reason, when I saw that video, it instantly hit me, and I went into tears because I thought about my son, I thought about my brothers, I thought about my close friends, that easily that could have been George Floyd.
Mike, any thoughts before we move on?
No, I think it's been said. It's just, we do have, in my opinion, a lot of people who are at least asking questions now, want to know more. And that's a big key, to educate people. And, a lot of my white friends I'm talking to, just as T.O. talked about this situation and educating them, because a lot of people just simply don't know. I mean, people don't wake up in the morning, white people, and think about, our plight and the things that we're going through. So there's some education that needs to be involved. And as much as it's painful, all of that, everything that's happening right now, I can see a silver lining, quite honestly.
Good. Well, we could probably talk about this for the whole show.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I got the three of the greatest wide receivers in Eagles history on.
But we're not supposed to talk politics, are we? I saw some lady on Fox. She was getting on like LeBron and Kevin Durant because they decided
Laura
to
Ingram.
speak their mind.
Laura Ingram.
Yeah, she wants you to shut up and catch the ball. That's all.
Shut up and catch the ball.
Well,
And
see,
that's
that's
the
the problem right there.
that's a real issue.
It's tough stuff to talk about. So
but
that's
honestly,
why they want to shut up.
In so many ways, especially when a lot of white people are asking me, like, well, how is it? What can I do differently? They're look at the comments that she made when Kevin Durant and LeBron, had something to say about politics, and she told them, to shut up and dribble. Yeah. When you look at that situation, that's racism staring you right in your face. And you look at the comment that she made when Drew Brees came out and said what he said. Basically, he's entitled to his opinion.
He's entitled to his opinion.
It's right there in your face. The two black guys who are athletes that said it. Here's Drew Brees, a white guy. He gave his opinion. It's right there in your face.
My point.
Well, it's great. It's great to see that the young whites are out in the protest too. So that's where we need that to be. For them to be able to to understand. Now they are learning, they are getting it.
Right.
You know, now they're getting it earlier than their parents, and their parents should know already. Hopefully they are going home and schooling their parents and saying, Mom, Dad, this is what you should be, this is what you should do.
And part of it, and another reason is that guy in the White House, number 45. And I think now, as you said, Harold, these white people, these white kids, they're realizing that he's part of the problem. Now we got to get these kids that are 17 and older, we got to get them to vote.
I was talking to Mike the other day, and I was telling him about voting. We just don't go out and vote because we are Democrat or Republican. We need to go in and start in our local, state, and federal, not just going out and voting. Make sure you know if that person is on the same page as you are. So we don't make this mistake that we made about 3.5 years ago. So let's make sure we do this right, and that's where it would start. Also.
Yep.
All right. So now go ahead, T.O. You got one more thing?
No. This is good. This is a good segue. I know you want to segue into the football stuff. I just want to say to Harold, happy belated birthday. I don't know if you got my text or not, but Freddie has.
That was you?
Man, I kept texting you.
But I said,
Harold, this is T.O. I don't know if I'm sure I identified
myself. T.O. I thought of somebody trying to play a joke on me, because I'm always worried about somebody punking me out, just like I thought somebody was punking me about the Hall of Fame. So I said, I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to do that. But hey, man, I really appreciate that. And I meanted to ask you if that was you or not.
Yeah, that was me, man.
Okay, I apologize, my brother.
It's all good. It's all good.
I didn't want to be punked out. Y'all be on a chat like this, and everybody laughing at me. We punked him out.
No. Hey, he treats me the same way.
You ought to stop. You stop.
Yeah, well, I had saw something on that they ran. I think it came across social media or whatever, that it was your birthday.
That was Hall of Fame.
Right. And then Freddie, obviously me and Freddie are still friends, and he was like, yo, it's Harold's birthday. And so I was like, yo, shoot me his number. So he shot me a number. I kept him like, yo, Harold, happy birthday, blah, blah, blah. Never got a reply. I think I hit you again.
That's Harold.
That's Harold. But anyway,
thank you very much anyway, man. Appreciate you.
Absolutely.
I'm just y'all go ahead and run the show, man.
Hey, Mike, you need to quit. Stop it. You just add some gasoline on stuff.
Just don't change, even after retirement.
I didn't know coming to the Eagles. I didn't really know much about Harold. Well, obviously we got to know each other. We got to know each other. My season in 7 games there, and I can't tell you what a great inspiration you were to me while we were there. And like I said, I got to know. Like, a lot of people don't know much about me, but when I came out of high school and I went to UT Chattanooga, I had no idea that I would become the receiver that I did. So I honestly had no idea that I would play beyond the collegiate level as far as playing football is concerned. So obviously going from San Francisco to Philly, those are probably like the 2 top franchises that I played with, other than the Cowboys. But that was probably like one of the highlights of my career, playing in Philly. I think we all are aware of what those fans, what they mean to us as players, and vice versa. But I had one of my highest points in my career playing with the Philadelphia Eagles. And obviously, like I said, being out there with Harold every day, he wants to comes out there. The guy says he has his gloves. He's giving it around. He's catching it. So I was Harold wants to get back out there.
No, don't want him to get back out there. Just trying to give a service, Teal, and just trying to help. That's all I was trying to do, man. But I was, when Seth said that you were going to be on this, the first thing I thought about was me giving you those prayer cards every game day. I always thought about that, just to make, keep you in the spirit and stuff. Pretty much and stuff. So, you're a great ball player, man. These 2 guys right there, Mike, and, some guys I really, really admire watching play and playing with Mike. In fact, the 3 of you guys, man, I tell you what, awesome ball players, awesome people, man. And I really appreciate being able to be on here with you youngsters, and just talking and enjoying your conversation, hearing your your points about this crazy mess that's going on right now.
Well, T.O., you didn't have the pleasure that I had. I was actually his teammate for 2 years. So
And you
I
loved it.
really got to know him. And some things I can talk about, some things I can't talk about.
No, don't.
But it was, listen, it's a real treat for me to just be on with both you guys. I got to watch you and cover you. And T.O., you, to me, one of the best I've ever seen. And like Seth said earlier in the show, there's no question you should have been on the first ballot. And so, and I always tell people when they ask me about you, one of the things that I admired so much was not just game day, but every practice, the way you bought it, so to me, you were the epitome of a professional when you stepped between the lines, the way you played the game, even at practice.
Mm-hmm.
It was the way that young guys should practice every day. That's how young, to me, you practice. You make the game easy when you practice the way you practice. Like LT used to say, they pay me to practice. Hell, I'll play Sunday for free.
Right.
And that seems like what it was like for you for practice, because you practiced so hard, and I appreciated that. But the other guy, I got to play with him, and it was really special for me. Young kid coming from North Carolina, wide-eyed, wet behind the ears, didn't know anything, but I had Harold Carmichael there to watch, and that helped me tremendously.
You guys,
yeah, I mean, you think about, like I said, both of you guys' career. Like I said, I wasn't a historian of the game, and I just played off pure athletic ability. And then year after year, I worked in the off season with a trainer, and there were things about my game that I wanted to get better. And so I was very fortunate to run across this guy, and he kind of helped me enhance my game. And watching Jerry Rice every day, who's obviously the greatest receiver of all times, understanding the West Coast offense, learning from Steve Young, just me being kind of a sponge. I was absorbing everything. I was watching the tight ends. I didn't just watch Jerry. I watched all the receivers. I mean, there were free agents that came into camp. I had enough wherewithal and understanding of everybody that came in camp had a special gift. And it was something about them that made them unique for them to be in camp. And so I took a little bit of everything from everybody that I saw. And so, again, I was really raw and green coming out of Chattanooga in '96. So I didn't really evolve until my fourth or fifth year. And that's when like I said, my work ethic alone was something that kind of propelled and put me over the hump. Everybody there's a lot of similarities that they have with me and Jerry. There are a lot of parallels as far as our work ethic. But I think that came from just me wanting to be good. I knew that coming out of high school, I was probably like maybe a 2 or 3 star athlete. When I left college, I didn't really think that I was gonna, play football. But I was afforded the opportunity through the draft picks, and I just got better and better. And so I was one of those guys that I didn't want to accept mediocrity. And it was one of those things, like for me, I realized that the Niners gave me an opportunity to play the game of football, and I made the most of it. And so things just kind of just started to unfold every year, and I just started to, have that pursuit of greatness. And so it wasn't until like my fourth or fifth year that I think the light bulb came on, and then I started to get better and better.
Awesome. If I just let y'all have the table, y'all just keep on talking and talking and talking. All right, let's move on. So, let's talk some NFL teams. The facilities have been reopened, with the COVID and whatnot. The players that are coming in for rehab, and the coaches are back in the offices. Thoughts on the 2000 season, and what it is that you guys, think the season is going to look like, how it's going to affect teams going into this season with no OTAs, no organized practices and things of that nature. And in particular as well, you're talking about rookies. The OTAs and training camp is a critical time for these guys. Give me your thoughts on, what you see in 2020 for the NFL.
Well, if they come in and worked out like T.O., his skill and the way he worked out, they're going to be okay without OTA. But if they came in and worked like Mike Quick, he just come in doing, wouldn't go to training camp, they're going to be in trouble.
See, you got to start that.
If he would have came in the training camp, he would have gave me incentives. But no, this is for me. I think they're going to have to. It's going to be a tough season. Everybody's on the same level, though. That's the good thing about it. That's nobody's going to have that advantage. It's just who you drafted and what type of team you have. If you have a team that we're all in this together, we hope that everybody has worked on the off season, regardless if they had to pick up paint buckets to work out, whatever way you had to do to stay in shape. Hopefully that team, the teammates has done that. So that's going to be a big thing. How guys worked out on their own also.
Mike.
So I think you just adjust. It's, to me, when I came into the league in 1982, we didn't have all of these OTAs and all these things going on. We had some all-season conditioning, but I just think teams are just, fortunately for the NFL, this COVID thing, all these things happen in their off-season. And so now you got all this time to try and correct it. And, in the fall, I just think that you'll get back to football, but it's going to be a slow start because they're used to the OTAs. They're used to this conditioning and all the things that you do in the off season now. And when you don't have that, unlike when I came into the league, it's going to be something that's missing. But they'll start. It's going to be a slow start, but they will start. But I think about these young players, their heads are just going to be swimming. Coming into the league and you don't know anything about this new system that you're going into, and there's not a lot of time for mistakes. There's not a lot of time. So these guys have to crawl into those playbooks like 24/7 so that once they get onto the field, they look the best that they could possibly look. They don't make mistakes and especially in this West Coast type of system, there's not a lot of time for mistakes and correction. You got to understand and know what you're supposed to do.
Theo?
Yeah, I would agree definitely with Harold. I think everybody's going to be on the same playing field. There's no advantage. And I think, honestly, this is where the head coach and these assistant coaches, they will have to earn their paychecks because they will have to do a lot of coaching to try to catch up and expedite what has been missed. If they don't, obviously, without the OTAs and all these other camps that they would have had leading into training camp. So I think that's what's going to be key. I think to the beginning of the season and as the season unfolds, and we think about who's going to come out of the NFC East, West, or whatever in the AFC, it's going to be really kind of the best coached team because like I just alluded to, there's no team that's going to have an advantage. So all these coaches and with these new players and how much they grasp in a short amount of time, that's what's going to be very, very key to the success of each team.
Maybe one little advantage in the NFC East. They all have new head coaches, new systems, all the teams except for the Eagles. The New York Giants, you got Ron Rivera in Washington. You've got a new coach in Dallas. So all of those, that's a lot of knowledge, a lot of implementing of systems from a lot of different coaches, a whole new system. So if you look at just purely the NFC East, I'd have to say that the Eagles are in a better position because they won't have all of those changes going on.
No.
I'm hoping to have a season. You look at the players, new players that come in. Do you get tested every day? Because every day after practice, guys going to go out. They're going to want to go have some fun, and you're going to have to test these guys every day because you know how you guys were when you came your first year in the league. You wanted everybody to come in here, pat you on the back when somebody set you up with a drink, take you out to dinner and all. How can you do that and stay safe? So the guys going to have to be very, very careful, and coaches and the security guys, whomever, got to make sure they talk to these guys and make sure that they're doing the right thing after practice also.
Yeah. I think they'll have the processes in place before the players start to come in. I read something last week about players not wanting to come in early. They're afraid of risking injury. It kind of joggled my head for a minute. I'm like, what are they talking about? Football is what you do. But the game has changed. These players and these teams, they don't work like we used to work. And What's your thought? Because I mean, whoever put it out there, it couldn't have been his thought alone. It had to be some thoughts that were, kind of put together between, in conversation. Players not wanting to come in too early, risking injury. I mean, it just makes no sense to me.
Hey, that's what that goes back to a point we talked about earlier, where they wouldn't have to worry about that if they would have with the CBA. They would have gotten some guaranteed contracts into place, and that wouldn't be an issue. But I'm just saying. But I mean, I don't. I mean, that mindset again. That's obviously a new generation way of thinking, as you just said. I mean, we're used to hard work. I mean, that's what they wanted us to do. That's what we did. But I think it's going to be an adjustment for everybody. So I'm sure, like I said, whomever said that, that may be way he's thinking right now. But again, like I said, once the season unfolds, and I guess they give a really clear and concise guideline as far as what's going to be done and what's needed. And as Harold said, if everybody can be, they got to be dedicated, they got to be disciplined. It's going to be at the end of the day, it's going to be the better prepared teams that come out on top. And so that's going to take a lot of discipline for guys to really not go out, kind of social distance themselves. Because again, like I said, if you want to be successful, you can't be going out in the streets contracting or whatever, and then putting your team and other players and the staff at risk. That's not going to be advantageous.
Wow. Well, shifting again, I want to talk about these Philadelphia Eagles wide receivers. Everybody has been well chronicled how the team struggled with wide receiver play last year with the injury to D. Jackson, Nelson Aguilar going down, Alshon Jeffrey going down. The Eagles got really busy in the draft this year, and they grabbed 3 wide receivers. Jalen Reagor, this Hightower kid, the Watkins kid, and the impressive trade to go get Marquise Goodwin for a wide receiver. You guys, in particular, you're close to the team. T.O., you probably keep an eye. How do you see these 3 players fitting in, with Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey? And I got question marks around Alshon Jeffrey because we still really don't know right now whether he's going to be a part of this football team, when the season does start.
Well, I think if you got a track meet, they're going to win. If you're a 4x1 relay team, nobody's going to come close.
Yeah, unfortunately, the 2020 Olympics has been delayed too.
That speed thing is always good, but everybody could outrun me. I couldn't even outrun and nothing, but you got to be able to adjust to what the team, the team system. A lot of guys come into a system, they can't play in that system because they're too fast. The quarterback can't get the ball to them. Maybe they can't stay healthy. That is going to be the big thing. Staying healthy when guys are just talking about a guy worried about getting hurt. Some people couldn't play back in the 60s and 70s, if they weren't about that. So, guys got to come in with the idea, like, T.O., you said, and like Mike, I know how tough it was when you guys first came in, trying to fit in and try to understand the system, and that's going to be big for these guys. Again, like you said, Mike, these guys going to outrun everybody. But can they catch? Can they adjust to footballs? We had that problem with a couple of guys. They could run, but they couldn't adjust to footballs. They couldn't adjust to the pass. So just learning this game, understanding the quarterback, and most of all, the quarterback understanding you too, knowing when you're going to break and knowing your patterns.
Yeah, well, they really addressed the wide receiver position. They drafted this kid Whiteside last year. Nobody's even talking about him right now. They picked him number in the 2nd round, 57th overall, and everybody's talking about these new wide receivers that the Eagles have just acquired. The only person that's talking about him is Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson said he expects a big year out of him, after a year where they really got no production out of that pick last year. He's kind of the forgotten man. You guys have seen him play. What's your thoughts on Whiteside.
He couldn't get on the field. You know, that would bother me. A number 2 round, second round draft choice could not get on the field. You know, why? You know, I don't think he was hurt that much. You know, I just don't understand that. So that's something that bothered me with a lot of guys. You know, they draft him like that. This is you're playing with the big boys down. Some guys are good playing down there with the Pop Warner team, but when you come up here, a lot of things are much faster and tougher.
And also, I think, you know, when you look at the receiving core, that the 3 that you mentioned, that will be considered veterans. And as you've noticed, these guys have been injured. And you're talking about the draft picks that are now, you know, hopefully in addition to what they already have, it's going to be hard for these guys to develop, because when you think about these young guys, when you go into training camp, just like Mike alluded to earlier, when he went into camp with Harold Carmichael, he looked up to Harold. He looked up to him. He watched him. He studied him. He hadn't reached his potential yet. That's what these younger guys are going to be looking forward to, is to watching these veterans, watching how they practice, watching how they study, watching how they play. And if they're not on the field to do these things, it's going to be slow treading for these young guys to get to the potential and the expectations of what we're all talking about. If, again, speed is a part of it, but if that's the case, then there will be a lot more guys playing in the National Football League predicated on speed. But as Harold said, there's a lot that goes into playing the receiver position, and Mike knows that as well. It's route running, it's separation. It's learning your opponent, learning coverages, this and that and the other, breaking down, learning how to break your opponent down each and every week, how to adjust your game to different defenses, or learning different ways to, like Harold said, adjusting to the ball and things of that nature. These are the things that obviously are going to help these younger guys, again, live up to the expectations that we want them to. So it's going to take more than just speed. And if these guys that are looked up upon, that looked at as veterans, your D-Jacks, your Aguilars, these are guys that are going to help groom and mold these guys to where obviously the Eagles need them to be.
Quick, you know,
so we don't know what the construction of that position is going to be. Right now, they've got 14 receivers on that roster. 14. They'll go into camp with 14, 15 receivers. When camp is over, they're going to end up with 5, maybe 6. At most, it's going to be 6. And you look at D-Jack, he's back and he's healthy. Hopefully, Alshon is back healthy. You mentioned J.J. Whiteside, the kid out of Stanford. He's a possibility. Greg Ward ended up being their best receiver at the end of the season last year, a slot receiver, a former quarterback out of Texas Tech, who now is a slot receiver. So there's a lot of talent that's there. They draft Jalen Reagor, and Jalen Reagor can do a lot of things. He's not just a guy that's going to be outside or slot. You know, Doug and a lot of these guys now, they like the gadget plays, the jet sweeps and the bubble screens and all of these different things. So I'm sure early Jalen Reagor is going to be a part. That's going to be a part of his package, that he's going to do things like that, as well as be a return guy as he starts to learn to play the game at this level. But there's a lot of talent at that position. It's just hard to even think about. I didn't even mention Marquise Goodwin. It's hard to even think about the 5 guys that they're going to end up with all of this speed, talent at that position. But it's a good problem to have.
Well, you know, they lacked a lot of big plays and explosiveness, even sustaining drives last year. They really struggled. I mean, I think that's why you see them bring in so many wide receivers. And the key component is Carson Wentz, and how do these new wide receivers across the board, how does that affect how he plays? How does that affect him long term? And you got to believe that, listen, you know, they're going to have some tough decisions to make when you talk about those 5 guys that they keep, because you got draft picks sewn up in Goodwin. Well, you traded for him. You got draft picks in Hightower, Reagor, and Watkins. And then you got a number 2 tied up in Whiteside from last year. You know, how does that affect Carson Wentz? Because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, these weapons have been formulated for him to be successful. So I just don't believe that they drafted all these kids, you know, to still turn it over to the veterans. I think some of these guys that were drafted, those first two wide receivers, they're looking for production out of those guys this year.
Sure.
Your opinion on how this affects Carson Wentz, because he is the one that's been under fire between the injuries and them not being able to be successful in the playoffs the last 2 years. What does this do for Carson Wentz's trajectory?
Well, Carson, for me, go ahead, T.O.
No, I think it affects them heavily because as we talked about earlier, when you think about them not having the OTAs and things of that nature, that's where Carson usually gets familiar with the receivers and gets used to the timing and see which athletes, which receivers that he can probably count on most. And so all this time that's being missed, like I said, it's going to have to be expedited. And I don't know if this is enough time with however the schedule is going to be and is allowed for him to get a feel for who's going to be there, who can be what. And as you said, Seth, these guys are probably going to be looked upon to come in and step in right away. And if that's the case, then like I said, I don't know what the expectation is, especially from a fan standpoint, of them really being really productive and being successful during the course of the season. So I think this is going to weigh heavily on Carson Wentz. It's going to probably really push him to make more plays, get more plays and production out of that quarterback position as far as his decision making, more so than the receivers. So it's going to have to be probably like an all by committee type of thing because, I mean, with the injuries that they've had, obviously, like I said, you may start the season off fresh, but then you got to expect that something's going to happen as the season unfolds. And do you have a number one receiver right now? Obviously, D-Jack, if he comes back healthy, he's that guy. But the guys that you've mentioned with Trey, with Godwin, these are guys that are good ones. These are guys that they're looking upon to play very heavy minutes. And then, like I said, you asking these new guys to come in, that's going to be a tough task.
Guys got to come in there. My thoughts are pretty much what T.O. is saying also. The guys got to be able to get Carson's trust. But with that, these receivers have to come and say, I'm going to be your number one receiver. You're going to have to make a decision. If you're going to cut me, it's going to be a tough decision. I'm going to come out there and make Carson I'm going to make me his number one receiver. That's the way they got to come and think. They cannot go in there with blindfolders on because of number one draft choices or veterans guys come in. They got to go for the best receiver. They got to put the best receiver out there. And back to my point, that receiver's got to be the one that Carson's going to trust. And, all the quarterbacks got to trust, because everything that's thrown to them, anything close to them, they got to catch it.
It's all about Carson. It really is. And the early part of the draft was about Carson, getting him enough weapons around him, getting that speed so that you can blow the top off the defense, as they say. And what that does is it opens up the field. You got Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, that's one of the best tandems of tight ends you'll find in the National Football League. And if you have the ability to stretch the field, to run those safeties off, there's a lot of room for those guys and for Carson to operate underneath the defense whenever you're able to do that. It's all about Carson. And he's not real comfortable throwing into tight windows. And that's an area that I think will continue to evolve as he grows as a player. But having all of the speed around him now, and there's a lot of speed, they're hoping that it helps not only stretch the field vertically, but horizontally stretching the field, creating big pockets for him to put the ball in. It's all about Carson.
Yeah.
So, as we shift, I want to get into a little wide receiver talk from you guys. I got 3 wide receivers who played in 3 different eras in the NFL. From a skills point, what, in your opinion, made great wide receivers in your day, and what makes great wide receivers in today's adjusted game?
Well, starting out, back in the 60s and 70s, in 71 when I came in, you find a receiver that back then you had move routes, you had stem routes. Today they're pretty much going just run fast, turn around, or outrun somebody. But back in the day, you had to, some defensive backs, I don't know if they could play back in the 70s, because you're talking about guys with break ankles. You know, you run a quick slant. You try to jump that. Next play, you run a quick slam and then take it up on him and then break it in. There were so many move routes back then that, you know, guys today, it would have been very tough for them to play. But, you know, receivers nowadays, I wish I just had a little bit of this speed, dude. You know, it would have been great, man. I mean, just to run past somebody, you know, you wouldn't do that back in the
Stop
day.
it, man. You're a Hall of Famer. Stop it.
Yeah, man, but if I'd have been 30 years ago, the Hall of Famer, you know, with that speech you guys had, you know. So, but you know, that's the biggest thing. The move routes that we went through, and it's a different era. And then, Mike, I think when you came in, it started changing a little bit. You know, the stem routes, that type of stuff. Until I think, you know, pretty much when you were playing and stuff, that's when the speed routes came in. Just down 20, break across, do comeback routes. You know, some post corners, not a whole lot of post corners. You know, it would just run in and then and bend it out. But, you know, these days, I mean, back in the day, I mean, everything was you cut on a dime on those breaks.
Yeah,
so that's the difference in receiver today.
Right. Yeah, and I think with me, I didn't want to be one-dimensional. And I think early on in my career, before I was able to really hone in on my skill set and really trust what I was able to do, because early on in my career, I had great size. I was physical, but I had trouble getting off the bump and run. And so, yeah, free access. Yeah, like Harold said, I could just run that route based on what it looked like in our book, you know, the route tree. So I wanted to become multi-dimensional, you know. So I started watching how, again, tight ends and other receivers ran their routes. So to Harold's point, again, we started to run the extensions of routes or variations of certain routes. Like I said, we ran a slant, and we ran so many of those in the West Coast offense, and you get some really nosy defensive back. They want to kind of jump on that. Then we'll run a slow go, which is a slant go. We'll take it up top, and then we had a route if they played off. We ran the Colorado, which is a slant, run up to it, and then we turned back outside. We ran a lot of double moves off the curl route. So these are some of the things that Harold obviously mentioned, that, again, like I said, you know, you start to see the evolution of the game, you know, from Harold when he played, then Mike Quick, and then myself. As you see, if you watch those film, you saw the evolution of the routes based on the body types of the receiver, the ability of different receivers. That's why I wanted to be multi-dimensional. I just didn't want to be one-dimensional, and that's what made me want to be better than what I was coming in. But I watched a lot of film, you know, watching Jerry. I watched J.J. Stokes because he was a big body like I was. Jerry was obviously the smaller of the three, but, you know, Jerry's frame was a little bit smaller than ours. So Jerry was more of a finesse type of receiver. Again, it didn't hurt that he had Joe Montana throwing the ball. Then when Joe Montana leaves, he had another Hall of Famer throwing the ball in Steve Young. So, I mean, he had no drop off at the quarterback position, which had obviously helped him become the Hall of Famer that he is now. But that's what I see, you know, with the evolution of the game. And what I saw was that just different body types. And for me, I was just hungry. I didn't want to be average. And I just kind of worked myself to become the receiver that I became. And what helped me too was what we call RAC or YAC, you know, run after catch or yards after catch. That was one of the strengths that I really wanted to kind of take to another level. Once I got my hands on the ball, I wanted to make something happen. And there were times and periods during the course of a stretch during my career where I had a lot of drops. It was because I started to realize the skill set that I had. I knew that I wasn't just a playmaker. I realized that I was becoming a game changer. So that kind of factored in sometimes the drops, some of the easy drops that I had, because once I realized, I'm like, man, I can't be stopped. And so when you think about what I did in San Francisco, and then what I did with the year or so with Donovan, when I had a quarterback that could just stand back there and hose it 50, 60 yards, I became unstoppable. I didn't really know my stats until kind of like when I left Philly. I played in 21 games and I had 20 touchdowns. So that, you know, having somebody like Donovan to throw that ball to me like, bro, when I got into training camp and I got to understand what type of arm he had, dude, it was just like Andy Reid he just used me, exposed me, and I loved it. Trust me, I loved every bit of the time that I was there in Philadelphia, because Andy realized what type of talent that I had, and I relished at the moments to get on that field to be able to run every route in the route tree and have a quarterback that could throw it all over the field.
Hey,
Woo.
Seth, this dude would catch a slant route and run 60 yards to get to the end zone with nobody in practice. This is how he practiced. He would catch a simple pass. He would catch a turnout route, an outcut, turn it up the field, and run 40, 50 yards to get to the end zone with nobody on the field. That's how he worked.
Yeah.
And I had to run down there and get the ball from him and bring him back and spot it.
Isn't that how it's supposed to be? I mean,
I had to keep the old guy in a little bit of shape. You know what I mean? He was just standing around, just with some big ass mitts, just catching the ball. Like, wanted to get him a little exercise in there.
Yeah, you had to run. And Andy back there, go get the ball. I got to run 150 yards to get the ball and come back and spot it.
But
right
simply
there.
though, Jeff, simply the number one thing that a receiver has to be able to do is catch the ball. It's as simple as that. You got to be able to catch the ball. You got to have great body control. You got to know how to separate from defenders. Those are the things to me that make great receivers. First of all, you got to have good hand-eye coordination and be able to catch the ball. You got to be tough, because you at that position you're going to be exposed sometime, and you got to still be able to catch the ball, knowing that somebody's going to put a hat on you and it's going to hurt. So being able to separate from guys, being able to catch the football, and being able to run routes, understand defenses, that's where you have good receivers.
For each and every one, for each of you guys, when you look at the game today, what current player in the NFL reminds you of yourself, and who was the toughest cornerback that each one of you guys faced?
Boy,
I'll say for me, I'll start out. Mine would probably be Julio Jones. He's a guy, again, the catch radius. Like, my catch radius probably is not like Julio Jones, but when you think about run after catch, this guy, he's one of the best to do it in today's game. I think the sky's the limit for this guy. If he can stay healthy, like I said, the sky's the limit. But when you think about being tough, they can catch the ball. You talk about body control. Like I said, his catch radius is second to none. And you put it in his vicinity, this guy is going to catch it. And once he catches it, he can get somewhere with it.
Who is my height? I don't know. I can compare.
Nobody.
JJ Stokes is the only one that I can think of that's
nobody
that tall.
I had to ask.
In today's game, there's nobody.
If you can't come up with somebody to tell me what cornerback during your entire career, we all have that one guy that just gave us, fits.
I didn't play against Mel Blount a whole lot, but we played together at Southern University. But they made a rule after Mel Blount, because when he put his hands on you, you were done. But there's some other guys, gosh, Michael Haynes. Michael was tough, because a lot of big receivers, because a lot of the small receivers, they could outrun me. But what I tried to do was have that body position on there. I put that body position on them. They couldn't get around me. So that was my weapon. And then the long arms that I had. If I can just put the body position on you, I didn't have to run a 4-4, 4-3. All I had to do is put my body between you and the football. So again, the defensive back, Lester Hayes, it comes to mind. They was telling me about Pat Fisher my first couple of years. He was 5'8" in here. I was 6'8". He used to eat my lunch and just kick me out of the cafeteria too. But he was a tough cornerback. But after learning and understanding the game, I started owning him. But I'll go back to Mel Blount and Michael Haynes.
Quick.
So probably the toughest guy. We had a lot of battles. Darryl Green in Washington. And many times, because I was just much bigger, I could go up over him and take the ball. But Darrell Green was a great cover corner.
Yes.
He was a tough guy, and he played for a long, long time. We ended up being friends, but boy, he was, every time I got ready to play against him, I made sure that I was ready, because the bigger the competition for me, the more the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I just wanted to get after him. But we had some good battles. And the guy today that I really like, I love Julio, but that boy Michael Thomas down in New Orleans, that kid right there, I really like his game. I like his toughness, the way he catches everything.
116
He's
catches.
not the fastest guy, but he is really, really talented.
116 balls.
So when you guys look at wide receiver play and quarterbacks today, Harold, back in your day, if the team threw 20 passes in a game, that was a lot. You look at the game today, these quarterbacks are throwing the ball 45, 50, 55 times a game. Now I know, Harold, you averaged about 3.2 catches per game. Mike, you averaged right around 3.8. T.O., you was up in the 5 era. So you can begin to see that change over time. I mean, these quarterbacks are throwing the ball, like I said, 45, 50 times a game. What would your careers have looked like playing for a quarterback, knowing that you're going to get about 10 targets a game, and the way that you guys caught the ball, you're probably going to catch 7 to 8 of them?
I led the league with 67 catches. Backup tight ends are catching that nowadays. Backup coming off the bench catching 67 passes. I led the league with 67. That's unbelievable.
I caught a third of that. I caught a third of that in one game against the Bears.
I'm trying to tell you that. See? It's unbelievable.
See, he was getting 18 and 20 targets.
Yeah. They were talking about run, throw, or either throw, run. It wasn't like throw every down, pretty much. So it's hard for me. That I was just saying earlier. The guy caught 116 passes in 1 year. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, you think about, like you said, the rate that quarterbacks are throwing the ball, these offenses that are more pass happy now. And then if you think about the running back, the running game is kind of just non-existent. You don't have any one running back that's really toting the load. You have a running back by committee now. So when you think about, again, the clip in which they're throwing the ball, for me, and then just the way the rules have changed.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about, just the numbers. Like, honestly, if I was playing in today's game, that would be my goal. That, like, one of my personal goals. Obviously, you have team goals. One of my personal goals, obviously, I would try to get 2,000 yards because it's easily obtainable based on how they're throwing the ball these days.
Can't touch you. Back in the 60s and 70s, you didn't want to go across the middle. Guys can't wait to go across the middle now. Those little crossing routes and stuff. So, it's crazy that, the way the rules has changed a lot.
I tell you,
defenseless receivers.
Oh gosh, don't say that. Can't stand it.
To you guys' point, T.O., you're a Hall of Famer, went in 2018. Harold, you'll be inducted, this year. A lot of people don't know, and Mike's gonna cringe because I'm gonna sing his praises a little bit because I played with him. He's the only one of you three guys, that I actually played with. People don't realize how good, Mike was. There was a period between 1983 and 1987 where Mike was averaging 10 touchdowns a year, man, and well over 1,000 yards, and the injuries is what really, cut, in my opinion, would have been a Hall of Fame career had he been able to stay healthy and put up the numbers the way that he was putting numbers up. Before I let you guys go, I want to talk about each and every one of you guys and something that our listeners and fans probably don't know. Okay. Harold Carmichael. I had to do my homework on y'all and bring some levity to this conversation. Harold Carmichael. Did you know that Harold played the clarinet in his high school band?
No, wait. Wait. No, people, I see that a lot. It was a trombone. They say the clarinet. I said I was back there with the clarinet. I was so stupid in the band, but no, I played trombone.
I mean, even to play a trombone, that's a feat in itself.
Stop.
To be somewhat, that's I mean, you're being musically inclined. I mean, I can't
the
even play
reason
the drums.
that's why I started playing sports, because I was so dumb in the band.
I would have loved to have seen 6'8" Harold Carmichael playing the trombone in the marching band.
And the marching band back there with the flute player, well, with the girls.
At the other end of the spectrum, in his athletic endeavors, Harold played center and threw the javelin at Southern University. Just a little fun fact, maybe people didn't know. Mike Quick is just secretive, man. You can search all over the internet, you can't find nothing on him. The one thing that I know that he was very proficient at, I know he was a 100-meter hurdler in high school and college, and a darn good one. His other claim to fame, other than being, the partner of Merrill Reese during the Eagles games, Mike had a cameo on the Goldbergs
Did you see the shorts?
2017.
My shorts. Hey, you remember those old coaches' shorts that Buddy Ryan used to wear? They're real tight, came all the way up, and grabbed everything. They had me in those little coaching shorts. So that was fun.
Wow.
I tell you, if Mike ever decides to run for office or any political position, I bet you we'll know what's in the bag. When you start running for office, they're gonna find everything.
Find everything out. They go into that closet.
True that. That's why I just stay home.
Oh yeah, right.
And T.O., man, I really didn't find any real funny stuff on you, but I mean, a lot of people probably don't know that Tennessee Chattanooga, you not only played football, but you played basketball and ran track. You were in the NCAA tournament with your team in 1995, and you anchored the 4x100 team in the NCAA championship.
Yeah. They asked me to come out and run, and I hadn't really had any practice, but they needed somebody to run one of the legs in the race. And so I remember we did that, and it was at East Tennessee State, and I didn't do bad. I mean, I went out for a couple of practices and then went to East Tennessee State, and I ran in the track meet. So yeah, that was fun.
Well, gentlemen, I tell you, I get it that everyone's time is their most valuable commodity. You guys have given me almost an hour and a half of your time. I had Donovan on a couple of weeks ago with all the quarterbacks, and I extended to him then. Don't go nowhere. I extended to him then.
Stop, T.O.
And I must extend to you now. Life is too short, brother. I want to see you guys work this thing out, and I'm offering my services to be the mediator to make that happen. We'll lay all the cards on the table, do what we do, hash it out, and walk away, shake hands, and be friends. I don't even want you to even comment on it, so don't even say nothing. You can call me and text me. We'll talk about it later on. That is the end of our show. I wanted to slide that in because I know if I give him another 5 minutes, I don't even want to go there.
Don't please.
Carmichael, I thank you, Mike Quick, and I thank you, Terrell Owens, for giving me the time and being on my show today. Love you guys, man.
Hey, thank you, man. Appreciate you guys,
Great
man,
to
and
see
really
you guys.
enjoyed this thing.
Absolutely, man. Hey, it's been a pleasure. Harold, I haven't seen you in a while. Haven't seen Mike. I will run into you every now and then.
I'm gonna answer the phone next time, Teal, but I didn't think it was you. Hopefully we
don't count on it. Don't count on it.
I got you now, brother. But hey, man, thank you guys. And Teal, hopefully we'll get out to the Hall of Fame, but I can't see it this year, man. That's gonna be a crazy thing too, to try to put that thing together, man. We don't know what's going on with that right now, so.
Let me just give you my congratulations now, because you won't see me at the Hall of Fame. I don't care if they have it there or anywhere. You won't see me. But let me just give you right now my public acknowledgement of congratulations to your Hall of Fame. And yeah, man, it's been a long time coming, well deserved, long overdue. And again, Seth, I appreciate you inviting me on the show. Again, I'm pretty sure, just like these guys, like I said, when you mentioned, these other two guys, obviously these guys were obviously pioneers. Like I said, I didn't know much about them before I stepped into the league. But once you mentioned their name, it was a no-brainer. I gave you my heads up. I was like, yeah, my vote that I was going to be on the show as soon as I heard those guys' names. So again, appreciate you guys and thanks for having me.
Very
Thank
cool.
you.
Awesome.
All right,
You guys be safe out there, man. Peace, to our fans. You guys, we'll see you next week. Next week we've got Dick Vermeil and Herb Luss joining me to talk some Eagles and talk about what's transpired from week to week, socially in the country. For my producer, Derek Stevens and Tom Schrader, I want to say thank you guys. I'll see you next week. Peace. Be safe out there.
Hey, be safe, everybody. God bless.
That's right. Black Lives Matter.